industry. Under a next-gen SKN, we intend to join Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Bahamas in exploring this as a niche market specifically. Just as Cuba did with its cigars, we want brand St. Kitts, or brand SKN, I should call it, to emerge as the highest quality brand of cannabis or medicinal cannabis to be found in the Caribbean. So that whether it is medicinal cannabis or it is cannabis grown for recreational purposes in a legally controlled way, we intend to brand it here in St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis cannot afford to be left behind and left out of this very important market. How are we going to do this? Our next-gen SKN intends to revolutionize our agricultural sector generally, so that farming and agriculture can once again become a driving economic force and emerge as a multi-billion-dollar industry. We cannot rely on tourism alone. Just as we relied on sugar alone for almost 400 years, so too we cannot rely on tourism alone. We must continue to find ways and means to diversify our economy, and better still, when there is interlinking between various industries, for example, the interlinking of the marijuana industry with the tourist industry, with the agricultural sector, then we know that we would be onto something that will benefit the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. In any new cannabis industry, we intend for our citizens to have over 51% stake in this new industry. Our people will not be left out. Those in the Rastafarian community who have acquired the knowledge, the skill, the technical know-how with regard to this particular plant and an industry of this plant, they must be included together with others who have an interest, a stakeholder interest in the emergence of this industry. We want our young people to be at the forefront of this new industry and be able to apply their creativity and their technology in creating value-added cannabis products. If our government is going to be part of the cutting edge of the cannabis industry, there is a need for significant research and development, referred to as R&D, in order to cater to the range of uses of cannabis as medicinal portions, as oils, as soaps, as shampoo, etc. We intend to provide all the necessary support mechanisms that will allow for production at the highest quality and ensure that our young investors get the best return on investment and create wealth, create real wealth for our people here in St. Kitts and in Nevis. This being said, however, we intend to capitalize on this new market. We intend to protect our natural environment and leverage to the greatest extent possible the native knowledge and production skills of our people. Our Rastafarian community, it is an important part of this equation and will not be left out at all. As a medical doctor, I have always maintained two things: that the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation, and that while food is medicine, our medicine cannot be our food. When our medicine becomes our food, it means then that we are dying. This is why it is important not to let monocrop agriculture completely take over and denude our landscape, as was done on the sugar. This is why this new medical marijuana industry must insist on cooperation and collaboration among small landholders and the formation of cooperatives that would feed into a well-managed export promotion process. That applies also for the use of marijuana, controlled use of marijuana for recreational and social purposes. Both tracks are going to be in existence according to the new policies that will emerge, and there will be laws created to ensure that this is maintained in a controlled way. The question of then is what I come to. What are we going to do to ensure that this takes place here in St Kitts and Nevis? We will pass comprehensive cannabis legislation in Parliament that treats with the decriminalization of the use of small quantities of cannabis, protect the religious rights of our Rastafarian community to use cannabis in its various forms for personal and sacramental purposes, even as we pursue regulations that would protect our children and our vulnerable populations. By unlocking the potential of our cannabis industry, we want to unlock our economy and unleash the vast potential of our people. Under the new next-gen SKN cannabis policy, I want to emphasize the following. 1, the Rastafarian community will no longer be disrespected. 2, our young people will not be denied from participating in this lucrative industry. 3, our young scientists, they will be offered the supports and the incentives that would allow them to conduct the research and development that will explore all the various medicinal combinations that will cure the many ailments and diseases that affect our people. 5, for example, our young people could explore the healing properties of combining cannabis with locally grown superfoods such as guava, soursop, avocado, and pineapples. Who knows what they might be able to find? We might be having here among our young the new scientists of the world and of the future who will develop new products. 6, Next-Gen SKN is about endless possibilities and the freedom to unleash the creative energies of our people in order to create intergenerational wealth. I want you to recall my words in the Parliament in December during the budget debate. I said that in the first 5 years of our term, we will create over 1,000 new millionaires we mean that, and we shall achieve that. You see, all this is about creating the structures, the environment, and the support systems that would allow our people to become masters of their own destiny. We must be able to leverage the cannabis industry for the benefit of the economic, recreational, religious, and medicinal needs of our people. That is the policy, the next gen policy of the future Labour administration. I want to stop here for a moment because I have outlined the background against which we shall approach the debate in Parliament of these three pieces of legislation tomorrow, central of which is the cannabis bill. I believe that I will allow the lines to be open at this time before I move on. Or, Erasmus, as you wish, I will do as I'm advised.
Let's go to the phone lines first. And once again, we welcome all listeners as we prepare. Dr. Douglas prepares to listen to the first question. Let us go to the phone lines. Remember, the number to call is 466-5977. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, Mr.
Welcome to Ask the Leader.
Good evening, Mr. Douglas. I just want to reflect back. I just wanted to listen to something, please.
That is now going on about the legalizing of marijuana.
We cannot hear you. Caller.
Statements are being made.
Caller.
He's playing
You
something.
look around the community and you see what is happening. And you see who is smoking. And you see what is happening to them. What greater evidence do you need than that you confront every day? What smart man or smart woman could convince you when you pass on the street? You hear the conduct. You see how the bloody smoke without regard for pastor, lawyer, or Dr. Parsons. And you wonder what would happen if we were to legalize this. You must wonder, and when you hear people begin to talk about legalizing the thing, man, free up the earth, you have to wonder what will become of our society.
You see, Mr. Douglas, you listen to Timothy Harris again. I don't know if our reporters in this country don't do the work properly. We go to press conference. But these are the stuff we need to start to ask. When you say something then, what do you mean now? You want to tell me election just around the corner? I mean, a bill is going to pass to do with that? Nothing wrong with that, you know. I have a problem. But the dishonesty. The dishonesty of this man. How can we trust this man to run our country? How? Really? Listen to that. Come on, people. We need to stop playing with our people. We need to stop playing with the emotion of the people of this country, especially the young people. When it's going to end? All of a sudden, don't worry about crime anymore. We're not worrying about crime. A man got killed in West Farm. Nobody take it serious. It's not serious anymore. We didn't know it was a serial killer. Nobody taking it serious anymore. We're worrying about just the gang. What about that killing? It's not serious anymore. Because all about the politics. Where's the Christian Council? Where's the Evangelical Association? Where's the Chamber to cry out about that crime? Everybody's silent, Mr. Douglas. And when you talk, they're telling you it is politics. Keep off the radio. How could you keep off the radio? We have our senior citizens scattered all over the country. But nobody care anymore. Before, everybody had cared about the crime because you, Mr. Douglas, was in power. It was all about you. When is the election date? Nobody saying nothing. Where's the Christian Council? Where's the Evangelical Association? Where's the Chamber? Where's these people? They are quiet again because it's not Douglas in power. So nobody care about the country. Nobody care about the issue. But don't talk on the radio cook because you're always talking politics. What about the children's future 20 years from now? What's going to happen? We're going to have the same again? They're not learning. If I go, Mr. Douglas, look what happened in China. I'm warning our people. The doctor who found out what was going on, he was pushed around, he was done all kind of thing. Unfortunately, he passed away. But now they realize what is going on. Are we going to let the bastard high school go down the same road? Where 20 years from now, when our children and people start to get sick because everybody have the ego, it is too late. I'm calling on you guys in opposition. I'm calling on everybody in the country. Take our country serious and our people. Because it's all about, this is the worst of the politician I've seen in my whole life. Very dishonest, very corrupt, and very aggressive, very bullying towards people want to speak, and I could only speak the truth. And I'm passionate about what I'm talking about. These guys need to understand it's not about them, because there was crime then. It's about the country. Douglas, the country, Douglas. But now today, everybody forget the country. Once your pocket full of money, everybody, okay, well, I don't want anything. Nobody bribe me. Nobody tell me the foolishness. I want the best from the country and the children, future. You guys have a lovely night.
I want to thank our first caller for zeroing in on the discussion tonight, and that is the discussion of the cannabis bill that will be debated in the Parliament of St Kitts and Nevis tomorrow. Also, at the same time, we will be debating the Drugs Bill 2020, the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2020. And also, we would be looking at another piece of legislation that speaks to the expunging of records of persons who would have had criminal charges and would have been convicted on criminal charges where small quantities of drugs would have been involved. I just outlined a moment ago before the caller the policy that we will be moving forward with as a new government on the matter of cannabis and the related issues to this. Of course, what the caller did before he began to comment is he made it would appear
replayed
a statement that was made by Prime Minister Harris during the time when the Cannabis Commission, the Marijuana Commission, was still doing its work, and he made a scathing attack against those who use cannabis in order, it would appear, to influence the outcome of the discussions and the conclusions of the commission after it had consulted with people around the country. And what you're hearing in that particular clip is the Prime Minister in his most vicious form attacking the legalization of marijuana use here in St Kitts and Nevis. And this was happening at a time when the court had already indicated that persons who are of the Rastafarian community and persons who use marijuana for sacramental purposes, etc., that such use must be legalized. And instead of doing what the court had ordered, the Prime Minister took to the airwaves and in his usual style, attacked, it would appear, the court for the decision that the court had taken, basically saying the court was wrong, and attacking those who had been engaged in the use of marijuana, especially for those purposes. I believe that the society is changing. I believe that we must be aware of the changes that are being made in the society. I think we should be aware that St Kitts and Nevis, it is part of the international community. Changes which are made globally, internationally, in the region, can definitely come into St Kitts and Nevis and influence our way of life. In fact, that is what tourism is all about. It is an intermixing of cultures. When a tourist would leave from his or her home thousands of miles away, from across the world, and comes into St. Kitts and Nevis, they come to look at and experience what our culture is. And they, in turn, I am sure, would bring some aspect of their culture with them. Not even to mention the fact that when we go and visit their countries, we also, to some extent, would be under the influence. We would be impacted, I would say, by their own cultural habits and norms. And that is why we are saying, if the realization is that moving in a particular direction, especially with regard to the changing views with regard to cannabis, and we recognize that in that change there would be good for St. Kitts and Nevis, why not? The whole point is that, however, we must do it in a civilized way. We must do it in a controlled way. We must do it so that we will get and reap the benefits and minimize the non-benefits that can accrue with regard to the serious consideration of diversifying our agricultural sector to include cannabis industry and explore and exploit the good that can come from this. And that is why, if you would recognize in the policy statement I outlined a moment ago, it takes into consideration the full determination of the Labour Party in government to pursue the exploitation and exploration of the use of cannabis, the new emerging industry of cannabis use for the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The question now that is being considered, are these bills, which I mentioned earlier, and which will be discussed tomorrow, are these bills sufficient to bring us into the new dispensation with the global use of cannabis and the enormous wealth and prosperity that can be accrued from such? Are these bills limiting people's freedoms, again, not adhering to the specific orders that had been given by the court? Are we seriously looking at what other countries have done and have benefited from? And thus, are these laws enabling us to achieve the same benefits? So, for the next few minutes, permit me, of course, I would like to critique the Cannabis Bill 2020, which will be debated in our Parliament tomorrow. When you look at how the bill is being presented at this time, it confronts us as leaders and parliamentarians for the Labour Party, the Next Gen SKN team in particular, is this bill going to achieve what is our going to achieve what we say we would want to achieve given the policy guidelines that I have outlined? And that is why I believe we need to have some discussion today in this particular program. Should we therefore, as parliamentarians of the Next Gen SKN Labour team, should we support this bill tomorrow in its present form? In our view, the bill in its present form complicates rather than simplifies, and we believe it stifles rather than liberates the present state of play as related to cannabis and its uses here in our federation against what is happening in the world. Firstly, the new bill which replaces the Cannabis Bill 2019 that had its first reading last August is limited to establishing rules and regulations surrounding the cultivation, the supply, the possession, the production, and the use of medicinal cannabis only. I want to emphasize that. Limited to establishing rules and regulations surrounding the cultivation, the supply, the possession, the production, and use of medicinal cannabis only. Therefore, instead of being called the Cannabis Bill 2020, the bill really should be called the Medicinal Cannabis Bill, since it only deals with the establishment of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and the rules and regulations surrounding medicinal cannabis. This is a very important distinction for all who may be tricked into believing that this bill will govern the personal or religious or recreational use of cannabis as defined under the present Drug Act. Unlike the first version of the bill, this new bill does not deal with the use of regular cannabis at all. In fact, it has completely removed all of Part 2 of the 2019 bill that was brought in August that deals with the use of cannabis for religious purposes. This bill, the Cannabis Bill 2020, creates two separate classes of the plant without establishing criteria for such classification. The term cannabis is defined under the Drugs Prevention and Abatement of the Misuse and Abuse of Drugs Act as, I quote here, any plant of the genus cannabis and any of its parts, end of quote, and quoting again, and medicinal cannabis as defined under the new bill simply and very vaguely as cannabis cultivated for medicinal purposes or cannabis manufactured for medicinal purposes or a medicinal cannabis product. And so I speak here of the ambiguity, which I believe is deliberately intended. This ambiguity creates a lot of confusion in people's minds, which is quite dangerous. Dangerous for two important reasons. One, While the new bill has removed all of the rules and regulation governing the religious use of cannabis, it still ventures to regulate the use of medicinal cannabis for use at a place of worship. This is very misleading because while Section 39 of the new Act appears to be granting permission for the use of medicinal cannabis at a place of worship for spiritual healing, upliftment, and edification without limitations, it only allows this in the use of medicinal cannabis. This is a clear distinction, and ambiguity reigns. Secondly, this makes no sense whatsoever, and it makes a mockery of the sacramental rituals and the practices of the Rastafarian community. It seems as though this bill is targeting the Rastafarian community. It is unfair. For Rastafarians to be able to use cannabis legally in their religious practices, it therefore means that they will only be able to obtain it at a registered place of worship, which will have to be registered as such in advance and issued a license to use only the version of cannabis that is going to be designated as medicinal cannabis. If, for instance, the criteria that what will end up distinguishing regular cannabis from medicinal cannabis would be the proportion of the CBD content versus the THC content, this can have implications for the sacramental use of cannabis. So you may be using cannabis for sacramental use, but it is not the right type of cannabis. This is misleading. It is ambiguous. It is wrong. It means that use of regular cannabis, which is the THC content cannabis, remains outlawed over 56 grams or 2 ounces. The new cannabis bill is also very misleading to persons who may believe that the changes identified in the new bill apply to the use of regular cannabis. And when I say regular cannabis, I mean the cannabis which has a certain quantity of THC. In fact, even the new bill applies a fine of up to $500 to persons caught cultivating, supplying, or obtaining 56 grams or less of medicinal cannabis without a license. The penalty is even greater for those cultivating or supplying more than 56 grams without a license. $75,000 or imprisonment of up to 2 years. So therefore I ask, what, Mr. Attorney General, has changed? What really has changed? 2, there is no provision for the use of cannabis for personal use in this piece of legislation. This new act provides only for the use of medicinal cannabis, which can only be accessed by obtaining a prescription from a doctor after demonstrating a qualifying medicinal or medical condition, I should say. Any use or possession of regular cannabis or even medical cannabis for recreational purposes is still strictly prohibited. Is this the intention of this piece of legislation when the government is touting otherwise for its political purposes, trying to fool people? This is not what the bill is in fact saying. The New Drugs Act Amendment Bill increases the amount that persons are allowed to possess from 15 grams to 56 grams or 2 ounces. However, it is still a very difficult, or I should say, it is still a very ticketable offense that comes with a $50 fine, community service, or up to 3 days in jail. In other words, you can get a ticket, it is a ticket offense, and this offense comes with a $50 fine, community service, or up to 3 days in jail. The amount of cannabis resin that persons can carry has been raised from the 5 grams that was imposed in the last amendment to the bill that was made, and put it back to 15 grams, which was in the original act. Section 7, it is, of the Drugs Act still outlaws the cultivation of regular cannabis. The new 2020 Amendment Bill only proposes to eliminate the new subsection 3 that was added, that gave the minister the power to issue licenses for the cultivation of medical cannabis. That power now lies in the hands of the Medical Cannabis Authority. Medicinal Authority. I want to look at the section that deals with the breach of right to privacy. There are many other criticisms that can be launched at this bill. One final criticism is that by forcing doctors to report persons who have been prescribed medicinal cannabis for their inclusion in a national register, and to give a report every 90 days as to whether the patient continues to suffer from the qualifying medical condition or in their care, is a breach of doctor-patient privilege and privacy. And I believe this has to be debated with the Medical Association here in St Kitts and Nevis. This is a breach to privacy between doctor and patient. And this is why we say that the new Cannabis Bill 2020 is a restrictive bill that would stifle rather than unlock and liberate a thriving cannabis industry. In its present form, it will do very little to allow us to tap into this cutting-edge industry and effectively leverage all the possibilities that such an industry can bring. And so I want to emphasize again, a next-gen SKN Labor administration will ensure that our policy is pioneering and will maximize the full potential of this new industry. Very shortly, we will provide our policy map in the form of an app so that our young people can have access to all of the information pertaining to our policy on their smartphones. Again, I say a new next-gen SKN Labour Party will repeal this new bill if passed in its present form, because we believe it is too ambiguous, it is misleading, we believe it is not delivering what the court had all should be delivered, and we believe to some extent it is deceptive, it is hypocritical, it does not reflect what they are saying out there on the political platform, what they are saying about marijuana being freed up. This is not what is being legalized here in this document, the Cannabis Bill of 2020. Our next-gen SK and Cannabis Bill will not be about winning votes, but it will be about giving our people the freedom to unleash their potential and create intergenerational wealth while we protect those who should be protected under the law. The Cannabis Bill is a campaign gimmick designed to mislead and to deceive the people that the government is serious about creating a new industry here in St Kitts and Nevis. It is part of the scam that we are seeing as the Harris administration is gearing up for elections. It is similar to what they're trying to do with the boundaries at the 11th hour, trying to change the boundaries in order to get an advantage in the upcoming general elections, which we are saying should be called because the government's time has expired. The campaign bill, or the cannabis bill, I should say, it is a campaign gimmick. It is designed to mislead and to deceive the people. And we are saying that this is wrong. It is deceptive, it is hypocritical, and it smacks exactly what this government has been for the last 5 years. This was never part of Harris's plans in the first case. It was not in the manifesto. And if you heard the venom that is in the voice of the Prime Minister from the clip that was played by the young man who called in a moment ago, you would see that there is something inherent, something personal he has against Rastafarians and persons who might use drugs, must use marijuana for sacramental purposes. The Prime Minister himself has made public statements ridiculing the notion of legalization and disrespecting our Rastafarian community. However, as the election approaches, they are scrambling to impress the people by now allowing for the expungement of criminal records for persons who were convicted under Section 6B of the Act, or for possessing small quantities of cannabis or cannabis resin of 15 grams or less. They made such a huge song and dance about consulting with the Rastafarian community and including them on the Marijuana Commission. Yet, none of their recommendations, none, has made it into the new revised bill that I am referring to. In fact, all provisions that would decriminalize the cultivation, the use, and supply of cannabis for religious purposes or clarify their rights have been completely removed in this new version of the cannabis bill. I therefore ask, did the government take the time to share this new Cannabis Bill 2020 with the Rastafarian community? Were they aware that a major part of the bill that came last year, the 2019 bill, a major part has been removed? Why treat them with such disrespect? This bill, it makes a mockery of the Rastafarian community, a mockery of the people, the good people of St Kitts and Nevis. I will stop here again and open the lines.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. I think I've just received a clip from someone who resides in the British Virgin Islands, and it seems to be part of a statement that Dr. Harris made in the BVI concerning marijuana.
So you have a relative or friend at home involved in drugs, tell them to change their life. Because you see people who say, well, they're just growing some marijuana. Marijuana is illegal in the country. And the law is the law. And those who are involved in marijuana, they need guns to protect their turf, to impose their discipline on other young people. That is why a number of them in their gangs, they can't go out because they know what their masters have. And that is why we have to stamp it out. Some of them would say, well, in the States, it is being legalized in some areas for medical use where we are not in the States. And while it is being done in some of the states, I was in a meeting with President Obama, and he said in his lifetime, the federal government will never legalize marijuana. He said the federal government in his lifetime will never legalize marijuana. And you know what happens? A lot of these young people at home who are involved in the gang, they got arrested for the spliff or the herb. It's on their record. They have a police record. When they want to get a visa now, they can't get it. Because the federal government does not legalize marijuana. And they're not going to do it in a hurry. Jamaica has made some effort to do that. And I would say they're regretting it. Because I was in a meeting with the Prime Minister, and he said the banks in Jamaica are not taking monies into their banks from persons whose trade is marijuana. Because they are saying that the international banks consider it to be a drug. If they get involved in receiving money from drug activities, they could lose their license, they could be fined billions of dollars. So it's not as easy as some people believe. And a lot of those who are clamoring for the legalizing of the marijuana, you must ask them what will they do better. Because now the marijuana is illegal. And sometime in some pathways in Bastille, you can't pass. They dare you pass and the smoke, you inhale. You know it unhealthy for your body. Imagine if this was legal, they would be in the church with it. You know, so we have to ask ourselves what it is they will do different. There are some of them, they have taken the marijuana, they have mixed it with other drugs, create something they call sprang-along. They give it to young people and just twist up the young people's head. So there are a lot of harmful effects about it. And we, as people who know better, have to be part of the debate to say what is on our mind. Because it's easy to say, legalize it, let man make a living. How come they can't make a living and the other things that there? We need so much food, we need so much foods. Why they can't do those things that are legal and make a living out of it? Why it has to be something
that was a part of a statement made by Dr. Harris in the British Virgin Islands. Let us go to the phone lines and we welcome our next caller. Good evening, caller. Ask the leader.
Greetings. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
And blessed love, Mr. William, and good night, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Ryland Douglas.
Yes.
And to your listeners via radio and internet of Kyss FM. I heard those two clips, and I would like to emphasize on those two clips prior to what is taking place tomorrow for the sitting of the Parliament. When I listen to those two clips, it brings back a reflection in the minds of our people as how we will look forward to engage in this aspect of the herb use or hemp use, because me don't use no drug, and me playing it clear to the whole world without any fear or favor. Now the Prime Minister needs to take a step back and understand his feeling is not 40-something thousand people of St Kitts and Nevis feeling. And his expertise that he's bringing is not about the people. It's about his own political gain. And it's time now he really understands it, because he cannot even bring the format that's supposed to be really resolved in that was set up under the commission. This is it that we got to really take to the stage. The commission give a report to the administration in 2019 of January the 10th. Now we're in 2020, February, and they are going into the parliament now to indicate a law legislation to read. Well, I would say to the Prime Minister and his members of cabinet and even the representation of the parliamentarians them, if you all continue that road there, you all have a devastation, because you cannot tell me you're going to formulate a bill that an indicator industry and you still want to lock up people for the same use of that same industry. You are going to be real sick around here when it comes to these climax. I'm very sorry to see, because I'm be in Parliament tomorrow, you know. I will be right just sitting listening everything what is taken into this discussion. Because I know, and I will say this here straight out, the Prime Minister and even you, Mr. Right Honor Denzil and Douglas, when you was there as the leader of our federation, you had stated clearly that you don't want no hallucination on your hand, no walking zombie. Now you have a change of mind. I don't have no problem with that. But all I'm saying, let our people be fully aware in the aspect of herb or hemp, because we now use no drug. And I don't care what these scientists say, because the facts are here in front of your eyes, showing clearly that herb don't turn nobody in a senile way, now don't put nowhere into the people to create no animosity or create no drug lord, because I heard him talk about to pursue in guns and protect the turf. That's the Prime Minister stating that in his second clip I heard you play. But I will tell this here, Mr. the Right Honorable Denzil Douglas, St Kitts and Nevis, and not just St Kitts and Nevis, the whole Caribbean shores need to collaborate as one. Because if we go single-handedly, we're going to be destroyed by the bigger markets than out there. Once we work together as one and collide our strength together, we're able to safeguard our communities around us. This time now we utilize our emphasis in educating and bringing our people to a better standard when it comes to the use of herb and hemp, because time now is ready for people to rise and not be defaulted. Have a safe night.
Right. I want to thank Ras Aya for giving his contribution on the ongoing discussion this evening on the radio and on the internet on the Cannabis Bill 2020 that is going to be debated in the Parliament tomorrow. Ras Aya made reference to my own position several years ago when I did indicate that as a medical doctor and as the Prime Minister, one had to abide by the laws of the Federation and also from the teaching in my profession at that time. But I did indicate very, very clearly that by 2013, when I sat with the heads of governments and heads of state in Colombia and in the presence of President Obama, we took a decision to have a second look at the marijuana and wider drug use that was already in the Americas, in the hemisphere of the Americas. And we said that the approach of criminalizing marijuana and criminalizing people who had been engaged in drugs had not worked for so many decades that this fight against drugs was being pursued. And we took a decision in that meeting to dust off from the archives all of the studies that were done over the years by different experts in the Americas with regard to drugs, which include marijuana, of course. And we came to that position because we said we probably should begin to look at this problem within the eyes of medicine. Was there anything good that we can get out of the abuse of drugs, including marijuana. Is there anything that research can throw up that would turn what has become a drug that was being abused to a drug that could be put to good use for humankind? And that is why we are talking today about marijuana and cannabis and its medicinal use. I don't know if a lot of people are aware that pethidine, which is used in particular for pain killing, for killing pain as a painkiller, and which is used, I think, in every serious operation that a patient undergoes, that it would have been derived from a family of the same drug as cocaine. I don't know if people know that. So sometimes you have a drug, it is developed for good use, good purpose, but then it can be abused. And this is the same thing here. Over the years, we had been criminalizing the use of certain drugs. But we said in 2013, as heads of government, sitting right there in a conference, the Summit of the Americas, 2013, I think it was, President Obama was right there. And we agreed that was the decision of the conference. Well, I'm now hearing the Prime Minister say that Obama said he will never. That's not what came out from that conference. We were all prepared to look at the research. What is the research saying with regard to these emerging drugs that were creating so much havoc in our prisons and among and in the lives of our young people? And it is in that context that I myself shaped my personal opinion, so that when we went into the election campaign of 2014, 2015, it was I, Denzil Llewellyn Douglas, who brought to the campaign trail that in the next government of the Labour Party, we would definitely begin the dialogue on marijuana and its use, and how we would turn that into a good for mankind rather than a danger to mankind. We are here 5 years after in the debate. I am very happy that I did announce that position. I am very happy that over the last 5 years, we've had an intense debate on this matter. I am pleased that at the end of this debate for the last 5 years, with all that we have heard, with all that we have said, we are now in a position as the Next Gen SKN Labour team to go forward with a new vision, the positive side of marijuana or cannabis or whatever you want to call it. And also at the same time, not only look at its medicinal use, but also its use for sacramental and for recreational or social purposes. That is the way we shall take this country in the future. That is the way the world has gone. And so I give, again, strong support to all of our people. Continue with this debate, but for God's sake, let us not do it with any device at hypocrisy and deception. Let us come clean to the people of St Kitts and Nevis and speak to them openly and frankly. We have a 99% or 98% literacy rate here in our country. Our people can understand. Give them the facts and let them decide for themselves. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas, and reminding you that this program can be rebroadcast or will be rebroadcast tomorrow, Wednesday at 12 noon. And also the St Kitts Nevis Labour Party will be holding its next public meeting in St. Christopher 3, West Bastia, this coming Sunday evening, and we will let you know the exact location. So thank you very much. Also issues. Let's go back to Dr. Douglas.
Before you close off, I should say, Erasmus, I want to use this occasion to again publicly extend sympathy to Mrs. Natalie Foe and family in the passing and burial today of her husband, George Noilly Foe. It was a very good funeral. I think the message was apt. The burial rites were conducted with dignity, although I'm sure it was painful. And we all would hope that George Noilly Foe, first chief officer of the St Kitts and Nevis Fire Rescue and Services, would in fact rest in eternal peace. We would hope that the men who serve in this particular department in national security would recognize that we are with you at this time in your pain and in your grief as well. I also would like, of course, to use this opportunity to wish His Excellency Kenneth Kenny Douglas, best wishes on his birthday. Happy birthday, Kenny. I know that you are in mourning with the loss of your mom just a week ago, but please allow today, your birthday, to cheer you up. Happy birthday from all of us here at Kyss FM. Thank you.